Hello everybody, welcome to my last weekly wrap-up of 2014. First things first, I actually only got one book for Christmas, and that is the 7th Brother Cadfael Omnibus. Yeah, not only did I get it, but it's the 2013 reprinting. It's like super nice. It has glossy cover now, and it's floppy. The other ones have really stiff, thick paper, so they're like usually thicker than this. And I didn't, my parents gave me the package open, I was like, this can't be a Brother Cadfael Omnibus, it's too skinny. I'm looking forward to finally finishing the series, and thank you to my parents for getting this for me, especially for getting it for me new and not used, because it's really pretty. Shout out to the brother and the sister-in-law. I don't know if you watch this, but if you do, text me. But yes, my brother and my sister-in-law got me a Kindle. Isn't it cute? This is the Kindle 6-inch. It has 0 bells or whistles. All you can do is read on it. It is perfect! When I opened it up, I was kind of like, eh? And then I was like, oh. And then I binge read 3 things on it, and it is really awesome to read on. I think I may have given the incorrect impression to people, including my family members, that I don't like reading books in digital format. That's not the case. I have no problem with ebooks. I have avoided ebooks for the most part because I could only read them on my phone, and my phone is way too tiny to have a nice reading experience. Just the line lengths are way too short. But this is perfect. It's like reading a really, really comfortable paperback book. And yeah, so I read some things on it, and I will tell you what they are very shortly. The first novel that I finished this week was Titus, Groan by Mervyn Peake. This is the first book in the Gormenghast series. It was published in 1946. I have heard the term Gormenghast used before. I have heard the name Mervyn Peake, but I never actually associated either of those things with the fantasy genre in any way. They are not what I was expecting. I was expecting something a bit more like Tolkien, because I had it in my mind that because Peake was kind of a contemporary of Tolkien, that his writing would be similar. And no, it is incredibly different from any fantasy I've ever read. And it's like grotesque gothic fantasy, an emphasis on the grotesque as like grotesque caricatures and gothic, like the brooding people, the dark, deep, gloomy caverns of the castle of Gormenghast. I did not care for the dialogue of most of the characters in this, because all the characters, being grotesque caricatures, have like these really obvious verbal tics. All of the characters have really odd speech patterns, fragmentary and repetitive, or odd words, or lots of strange interjections, and it was hard to read the dialogue, but the descriptive passages are so good. Peake is really good at evoking that sense of place and just showing you how gloomy and odd Gormenghast is. The first book feels like a massive setup. It's 400 pages of setup. The character's name is the title. It's Titus is his first name, Groan is his last name. He's born in the first chapter. He's the son of the 76th Lord Groan of Gormenghast. But by the end of the book, he's only 2 years old. He's not really a main character in the book. So I think the basic plot of this book is change is coming to Gormenghast for the first time in hundreds of years, and nobody knows what to do about that. It was interesting once I realized it was probably a lot of setup, but for a long time I was sitting there thinking, okay, what's the plot of this book? I'm not really sure that there is a plot. The plot could just be, this is how things arrange themselves for the next 2 books. That's okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The other novel that I finished this week was The Glass Bead Game by Hermann Hesse. This is a modern classic published in 1943, but I did an entire review on this book. I will link it down below. It was a challenging intellectual read. I spent a lot of time thinking about it and its structure and how it was kind of an ironic Bildungsroman retelling of like Siddhartha or the Buddha myth or whatever. Yeah, I didn't have a very strong emotional attachment to it at all. I mainly just wanted to read it to challenge myself a little bit because it is by far one of the most unusual books I've ever read, far outside of my usual reading range. And I'm glad I read it a lot. I would really like to go on and read Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Right before Christmas, I bought 2 novellas and a collection of short stories by Kingfisher, which is actually the pseudonym for an author named Ursula Vernon. I have been a fan of Ursula Vernon for a long time, but not in the way that you'd usually expect. Like, I read her live journal for like 8 years. I occasionally went over and looked at her artwork on DeviantArt. I've been listening to the podcast that she does with her husband for like 3 years now, but I never actually went out and read any of her books. A couple of years ago, Vernon had been doing a webcomic series called Digger for like 8 years, and I think in 2013, it won the Hugo Award for Best Graphic Novel, and I said, okay, I gotta read that. And they did a Kickstarter to do an omnibus version of Digger. Let me go get that. Oh, God. Oh, don't fall on me. Oh, it's massive. It's totally worth it. So yeah. If you're looking for a graphic novel to read and you want something good and fun and kind of different, get Digger. I'm not sure if you can read it online for free anymore, but I'm sure you can buy an ebook version of it somewhere. It's published by Soulful Wolf Press, and this omnibus edition has lots of extras in the back, and it's like 800 pages. And it says on the spine, the most epic tale about a wombat and our archives. And yeah. So, I read 2 novellas and a short story collection by her, and I will talk about them briefly. As soon as I put this thing down. Oh God. The first thing I read by Ursula Vernon was her novella, The Seventh Bride. This is a retelling of the Bluebeard fairy tale, and it was so good. I was reading it going, this is like reading Terry Pratchett, but not like reading Terry Pratchett, just, it was funny and touching and so sensible. Vernon really writes a lot of heroines and protagonists that are sensible and practical even in the face of magic. So the basic story of The Seventh Bride is that Rhea, a 15-year-old miller's daughter, is asked to marry Lord Craven, and everyone's standing around going, well, isn't it kind of weird that a nobleman would ask a peasant girl to marry him, but we can't say no to him because he's a lord and he can make life hell for us, so as much as we don't want to send our daughter off to marry some creepy dude, you kinda gotta go. And she does, and deals with it all pretty well. She goes to his house after getting past the really creepy golem birds, and finds a hedgehog, so you know everything's gonna be good. She's got a hedgehog to take care of her. And then she finds out that Lord Craven already has 6 wives, and most of them are still alive. It was really good. If there's any of the Kingfisher publications that I would recommend, it would be this one. I gave it 5 stars, and I kind of want to reread it. It was just, it was so perfect when I read it. The second novella that I read by Vernon was 9 Goblins. This was also really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It is about how goblins are kind of fighting a war against humans and elves because humans have pushed them out of all of their homes and their natural habitats, and they finally had enough and said, no more, we're not being pushed around anymore. But the thing is that goblins are actually kind of, well, they're not inherently bad, but they are kind of dumb. The 9 goblins of the title are all that remains of a troop of goblins. They went into a battle and tried to attack a wizard, and then the wizard transported all of them and himself like 50 miles away across enemy lines into elven territory. And they're like, how do we get home? What's going on? And then they run into an elf whose name is Sings to Trees, and he is an elf veterinarian. You were introduced to an elf with his hand all the way inside of a unicorn who's trying to give birth. It was perfect! It was so cool! I was just like, what? I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I could definitely highly recommend this as well. It was unusual. It's not a retelling as far as I know. It is a purely out of the mind of Ursula Vernon, and it was really good. The final thing I read by Ursula Vernon was Toad Words and Other Stories. This is a collection of short stories, all of them, except the poetry, being more retellings of fairy tales. Most of them have already been published on her blog, and I had read some of them before, but it also contains a brand new novella called Boar and Apples. This was the one of the three that I read that I was not as in love with. Probably because I had already read some of them before, and also because I'm not a huge fan of short stories. I tend to like novella and novel-length things better, but this was still really good, and the Boar and Apple stories is a retelling of Snow White, and I usually think that's a story that's been rehashed one too many times, but I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought it was very well done. So for a collection of fairy tale retellings, I could definitely recommend this one, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars like I gave 9 Goblins. So that's everything I read over Christmas vacation, and I don't have plans on finishing many other books. I do plan on finishing Down Below Station by C.J. Cherryh and The Speed of Dark by Elizabeth Moon. This one I'm not so sure about, but I'm really enjoying Down Below Station. But I'll be back in 2015 to do my reading statistics video for 2014. I might try to do a top 10 favorites of 2014, and I completely forgot that I wanted to do a short reading goals video. But yeah, that is it for me in this video and for this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed to me in 2014. I'm really looking forward to making videos in 2015. And until next time, bye.